Mahmud of Ghazni was born in 971 AD in the city of Ghazni, located in what is now central Afghanistan. At the time, Ghazni was part of a small but militarily ambitious state under the leadership of Sabuktagin, Mahmud's father. Sabuktagin was no ordinary ruler. He had once been a Turkic slave in the service of the Samanid Empire, before rising through the ranks due to his loyalty, military genius, and leadership skills. By the time Mahmud was born, Sabuktagin had consolidated his control over Ghazni, turning it into the center of the Ghaznavid dynasty. Growing up in this environment, Mahmud was surrounded by stories of conquest, tales of valor, and the constant hum of political intrigue. He was trained in warfare from a young age, mastering horsemanship, archery, swordsmanship, and the complex art of battle strategy. But he was also educated in statecraft, poetry, Islamic law, and diplomacy, which were crucial skills for a ruler of his time. The young Mahmud was deeply influenced by his father's vision of expanding their territory and strengthening the Islamic State. Sabuktagin often campaigned against the Hindu Shahi rulers to the east and engaged in conflicts with neighboring kingdoms and tribes. This environment of constant military activity instilled in Mahmud an ambition for greatness. When Sabuktagin died in 997 AD, a brief power struggle ensued between Mahmud and his brother Ismail. Mahmud, however, quickly asserted dominance, defeating his brother in battle in 998 AD and claiming the throne. From the very start, his ambitions exceeded those of most contemporary rulers. Rather than being content with ruling Ghazni and defending its borders, he envisioned an empire that would stretch across Central Asia, Iran, and deep into the Indian subcontinent. Mahmud understood that wealth was essential to building and sustaining such an empire. He also knew that India, with its rich kingdoms, flourishing trade, and temples filled with treasures, presented both an opportunity for economic gain and a chance to expand the influence of Islam. At the same time, Central Asia was politically unstable, with the decline of the Samanids creating a vacuum that ambitious rulers like Mahmud could exploit. He secured alliances with powerful tribes, strengthened his army with both Turkic and Afghan warriors, and organized a disciplined and well-equipped force. His rise to power was not just about military skill. It was also about political intelligence. By forging relationships with influential Islamic scholars and religious leaders, Mahmud positioned himself not just as a king, but as a champion of the faith. This combination of military power, political strategy, and religious legitimacy would define his rule and make him one of the most influential leaders of the medieval Islamic world. Between 1000 and 1027 AD, Mahmud of Ghazni led a series of military campaigns into the Indian subcontinent, 17 in total. These invasions were not random acts of plunder, they were carefully planned military expeditions that combined strategic, economic, and religious objectives. His first major campaign was against the Hindu Shahi ruler, Jayapala, whose kingdom covered parts of present-day eastern Afghanistan and northern Pakistan. Mahmud's forces were well-trained and equipped with superior cavalry, giving them a decisive advantage. After defeating Jayapala and forcing him into submission, Mahmud gained control over the Punjab region, a crucial foothold for further expansion into India. Over the next 2 decades, Mahmud targeted a variety of kingdoms and cities, including Mathura, Kanauj, and Thanesar. These were not only wealthy urban centers, but also places of deep religious and cultural significance to the local population. Mahmud's armies were swift and relentless, often covering great distances in short periods, to surprise their enemies. His forces would loot temples, seize gold and silver, and capture valuable trade goods such as spices, textiles, and precious stones. The captured wealth was transported back to Ghazni, where it was used to fund further military campaigns, build monumental architecture, and sponsor scholars and poets. The most famous or infamous of Mahmud's invasions was the 1025 AD raid on the Somnath Temple in Gujarat. Somnath was one of the richest and most revered temples in India, dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva. According to chroniclers, its treasure included vast quantities of gold, silver, and jewels, while the temple itself stood as an architectural marvel. Mahmud's army traveled hundreds of kilometers through challenging terrain, defeating several opposing forces before reaching Somnath. In the ensuing battle, the defenders were overwhelmed, the temple was looted, and its idol was said to have been destroyed. Mahmud reportedly took fragments of the idol back to Ghazni and placed them at the entrance of his mosque as a symbolic statement of victory. While Muslim chroniclers of the time praised Mahmud as a defender of the faith and a heroic warrior, Indian sources and later historians often viewed him as a ruthless invader. His campaigns caused immense destruction, loss of life, and cultural disruption. Yet, from Mahmud's perspective, these invasions were not only about religious zeal, they were also a pragmatic way to amass the resources necessary for sustaining his growing empire. The sheer scale and regularity of these campaigns made Mahmud one of the most formidable military figures of his time. His control of Punjab provided a permanent base for future incursions into India, setting the stage for later Islamic dynasties to expand even further into the subcontinent. Mahmud of Ghazni's legacy is a complex and deeply debated subject. On one hand, he is remembered as a fierce conqueror whose 17 invasions into India caused widespread destruction and the loss of priceless cultural heritage. On the other hand, he is also recognized as a patron of the arts, sciences, and literature, whose court attracted some of the greatest minds of the medieval Islamic world. Under his rule, Ghazni transformed from a relatively small city into a vibrant imperial capital, filled with mosques, palaces, gardens, and libraries. His court hosted poets like Ferdowsi, whose monumental work, the Shahnameh, became one of the defining epics of Persian literature. Although Ferdowsi later fell out with Mahmud, the patronage he initially received helped the poet complete his magnum opus. Another notable figure in Mahmud's court was al-Biruni, the scholar and polymath whose works on astronomy, mathematics, and history remain influential. Al-Biruni's account of India, written after accompanying Mahmud on some of his campaigns, is considered one of the most detailed ethnographic studies of the time. It explored India's religion, culture, and social customs with remarkable depth, providing modern historians with invaluable insights. Mahmud's patronage of such scholars not only enhanced his own prestige, but also contributed to the spread of knowledge across the Islamic world. Despite his cultural contributions, Mahmud's military campaigns remain the most prominent part of his historical image. In Islamic history, he is often portrayed as a model of piety and military success, a ruler who defended and expanded the realm of Islam. In much of Indian history, however, he is seen as a symbol of aggression and cultural destruction. This duality in his legacy reflects the broader tensions in interpreting medieval conquests, where the same events can be seen as glorious victories or devastating tragedies, depending on the perspective. When Mahmud died in 1030 AD, after ruling for 32 years, he left behind an empire stretching from Iran in the west to Punjab in the east. However, his successors struggled to maintain this vast realm, and the Ghaznavid dynasty eventually declined under pressure from the Seljuks and other rising powers. Yet the memory of Mahmud endured. In architecture, literature, and historical chronicles, his tomb in Ghazni still stands today, a reminder of both the splendor and the controversies of his reign. Whether celebrated as a hero or condemned as a plunderer, Mahmud of Ghazni's life and conquests remain a defining chapter in the history of Central and South Asia. His story continues to be told, debated, and reinterpreted, proving that his ambition truly succeeded in making his name last through the centuries.